Have you ever wanted to grow and pick delicious fruit? Well, you can if you grow the easiest fruit in the world to grow, which is, are you a glass half full or glass half empty type of person? Do you focus on what is hard or what is easy? The same applies to growing plants and fruit in particular. If you're in the tropics, trying to grow an apple tree, that's not going to be easy. It probably is impossible, at least to get them to fruit. In the same way, if you're in a temperate climate like we are, trying to grow mango, that won't be easy. It'll probably be impossible to get it to fruit, unless you're in a greenhouse. The climate you're in has its limits. And climate is really a combination of temperature and rainfall. If you're in a hot climate and you have very low rainfall, you're actually in a desert. If you're in a hot climate, but you have abundant rainfall, then you're in a jungle. And each area has its associated plants. We tend to know some plants associated with our climate. We could know plants that are from a different climate that are growing in our climate because of the season. Let's take, for example, tomatoes. Tomatoes are actually a tropical perennial. Imagine that. They grow and they grow years in a tropical climate. But we know them in a temperate climate as a summer annual. That's a very different situation, but that's the effect that season has on plants. And yes, tomato is a fruit. What about the soil? Some plants prefer a sandy soil like we have. Other plants prefer a clay soil. Some like it dry and some like it wet. We can get even more specific. If we're in a mountainous or a hilly area, some plants like the sunny side of a mountain. There's other plants that rather grow on the shady side of the mountain. We call it the aspect of the slope. So you can see how climate, temperature, rainfall, season, the soil, and even as specific as the aspect of a slope can affect what plant can grow there, and specifically what fruit can grow there. So what fruit is easiest to grow? I would say the one that grows like a weed on your property. What do you need to grow a weed? Nothing. You're not seeding it. You're not transplanting it or planting it. You're not fertilizing it or watering it. No pest protection, no disease protection. Gee, you're not making any effort of any kind to grow it. It just grows. It's a plant that's destined to grow on your site at your succession stage. Gee, maybe it's derogatory to actually call it a weed. We should call it a wonder plant. Can a fruit be weedy? Absolutely. On our farm, if we do nothing, we get wild grape and wild native cherries taking over the property. We got to beat them back. This is the original grapevine. When we first planted the permaculture orchard, I left one wild grape growing. I've since topped it to 12 feet several times. I would qualify this grapevine as absolutely weedy. It's produced dozens and dozens of young all over our farm and in the surrounding areas. Wild grape growing like a weed. Could we do something with it? Sure, we could harvest the wild grapes. We could transform some of them into juice or jelly. I leave it for the birds. So if you have a wild plant that is fruiting, that is weedy, you could also graft onto it. Grafting is as old as agriculture, and you can take a grape, in this case, that has superior fruiting quality and graft it onto the wild one. You could do that with all kinds of fruit. My grafting mentor, Maurice Chaudière, used to have a definition that I love about agriculture. He said agriculture is the bringing of culture to nature, and grafting is an element of culture that you apply to the wild or nature. He used to take wild areas and convert the trees that were there to fruit and nut that were superior. We could do that in our areas. We could take trees and go from wild to a fruit and nut garden. It's possible with grafting. We can also use the wild species as a clue of what cultivated equivalent grow best and easiest on a given piece of property. For us, it's the wild grape. So when we plant a cultivated grape, we get an easy plant to grow. The same for wild cherry. How would you know what fruit are growing wild on your property? I would say the easiest is to find when that plant is in fruit. When it's in fruit, you go, yeah, that looks like a grape. So this is a wild grape. But it can also be where you look for it. So I always tell people, go along the hedgerows, go along ditches, go along hedges, places that are not regularly mowed, where these kind of plants that are perennial, that grow for several years before they fruit, that's where they can get established. I'm excited because now we're starting to get mulberry coming up in hedgerows. You may need an app, and there's lots of apps that'll help you identify a plant while it's young. There's no fruit on it. So just get used to using an app to find the plants. And once you identify one of them and you recognize the leaf pattern and the leaves, then when you start looking around, you'll be surprised at how many more are growing on your property. They're not fruiting yet, but they are growing. So using those plants as an indicator to growing something, so now I know that when we grow mulberries, because we have mulberries coming up as wild equivalents, well, our mulberries will grow much better. So what plant is the easiest, or what fruit is the easiest to grow for you on your property? I would say the plant that grows like a weed, plant its cultivated equivalent, and it will be the easiest fruit to grow.